All right, welcome to another episode of Invincible Impact. I'm excited to share this with you. The title of today's episode is A Man's Journey into Embodiment and Soul Purpose. I'm here with Joshua Zamrin. He's a somatic life coach and soul purpose guide. We're going to pop in right now, have an amazing conversation. This is for both men and women. This is going to be really rich, really deep, and I'm looking forward to jumping in with you, Josh. Let's go.
Let's go.
So let's get started with some of your background, man. We had a conversation on Facebook. We decided to have a Zoom call, and when I was connecting with you, you're up in the Asheville area, and I also saw that you were doing some coaching with people there, like volunteering to support during the hurricane aftermath. And I really loved your heart, loved your vibe, and when we talked, it was like super cool because of your journey, your experiences as a man, your vulnerability, your authenticity, the way I was connecting with you and experiencing you was so rich. I was like, man, we should do an interview, have you on this show so that we can get other people to hear this conversation, not just me and you. And love you to share a little bit about your background, who you are, how you got into the place that you're in today, what that journey was like, some of the challenges, the highs, the lows, and we'll go from there, man. Talking about man's embodiment and soul purpose. I'm really excited to hear this.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for having me. I feel like maybe it's a good jumping off point to model some embodiment, and some of what this work is deep authenticity. So just naming, elevator pitches are not my strong point. It's not my strong suit. Like, give me the key points, bam, go. I tend to drag out the details, drag out the context a little bit, and hopefully weave a good story that's nice on the ears. But yeah, just naming my increased heart rate and kind of clammy palms coming into this, and never doing a live session before, and only having a couple podcasts that I've been a part of. So just modeling a little bit of what I ask my clients and my fellow men to do is like not try to like put on this mask and say like I fucking got this, and just
This is so good.
leading with vulnerability, leading with the heart,
Yes.
and leading with the gut, so
I would like to say thank you, brother. And already a blessing, right? Such a rare gift to come forth and share yourself so vulnerably as a man, especially the nervousness a little bit, sweaty palms, and choosing to open up here that way is the best thing you can do. Experiential learning is my game. Nothing better than just being with it as it is. And so you're already demonstrating. I'm super grateful for that. And anything else that's there for you that you're present to, my heart is excited. I just want to share that real quick. And I'm actually appreciating very much your willingness to not have to wear a mask, your willingness to really show up as you are in the moment, which really is a beautiful display of embodiment and masculine embodiment, really being present to what's so without the need to cover up, to hide, to conceal in any way, and giving people a chance to really see right through into you as you are. So really well done. Where would you like to go from here, man?
Yeah, what something you said about kind of wearing the mask, that's been my big journey into embodiment and authenticity. I spent most of my young life, like, I don't know what age it started, but pretty young, putting on a lot of masks, like pretending that I knew what people were talking about, being very chameleon-like. My life purpose as a child and as a teenager was to get as many people to like me and to love me as possible. And so I would wear a lot of masks in order to do that. And the mask kept masking over the mask over the mask, that it became very difficult to ascertain true authenticity. Like, who am I? And so I was running more and more from that as I put more and more masks on. And that behavior and those patterns led to a pretty deep depression when I became a teenager. It was more anxiety as a child, and and as I became a teenager, really into some deep depression, some dark holes, many phases of just wanting my life to end. And this continued in phases until I entered a very dark, challenging relationship, which evolved into a marriage at a very young age, at
Mm.
21. And really, it was through that darkness and the coming apart, the making the decision to end it at 22, that was my first big awakening. That was my first big, um, huge destabilization, facing all the shadows I didn't want to face moment of my life, and really being faced with, okay, do I want to continue living life like this hermit with all of these masks and never really exploring anything that's interesting to me, faking everything as I've been doing in some ways, using humor as like my only way in and through connection, which I know a lot of men do, using humor to avoid emotion. And
Often a lot of dark humor too.
yeah,
Well, at least
absolutely.
on the job site, in the workplace.
Yeah, guilty.
Yeah.
Other option I played around with was killing myself. Like it was I was like really, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, what makes the most sense here? I could do this, I could kill myself. And then the third option was facing my fears, trying things that made me super uncomfortable. Just joining a CrossFit class was like this big, huge thing. Eating a little bit healthier, like committing to something. To me at the time, the pinnacle of anything was health and being muscular. Like I wanted to look fit. It was very based in aesthetics and not so much wellness and embodiment.
Mm.
And so that was my first big awakening, and realizing I can make changes in my life. I can um, break down some of these old narratives that I've been holding for so long. It was the first time that I really felt that, which snowballed a lot of momentum in me just exploring more and more things through the worlds of podcasts. And where I was living at the time, in central Pennsylvania, I wasn't really surrounded by anyone who was in the shared reality and the shared interest or passions that I was getting into. I had my first psychedelic mushroom trip, and my mind was opening and expanding in some
That'll
big
definitely
ways.
catalyze that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a couple things before you go
Yeah,
further that I would like
absolutely.
to go back and highlight that I heard it really powerful. One is the many masks that you were wearing, being the chameleon in different settings and circumstances to fit in, belong, gain approval. This is a big one. I know a lot of women, sure, struggle with this as well. Something that comes up a lot when I'm working with my clients in the groups. Your discovery of that seemed to like reached like its climax in the marriage is what I was hearing, and sounded like that was, and I'm asking you if this is true, that was like the beginning of you really taking back the power that you were throwing away, and choosing a path of authenticity, which was extremely uncomfortable, it sounds like, and you went through a lot of turmoil, and then detangling, unraveling from all of that. I mean, there was like that suicidal depression and darkness at the bottom where, I mean, you basically, to fit in, sounds like you're selling yourself out continuously. Your authentic self is getting suppressed one relationship at a time over years. And
Mhm.
then you find yourself completely absent from your own feeling of fulfillment and self-worth or something like that. And was that part of the depressive state as well? Like just being not in touch with who you really are?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and my negative core belief, the core wound was that at my core, I was nothing and not this like spiritual, like I
Yes.
am nothing and I'm every, it's like really dark, intense, existential, nihilistic, like,
Yeah.
uh,
I'm
I,
nothing and something's wrong.
yeah, like everybody else is something. They have this like natural affinity for life. They have these passions. They show up in these ways. And I'm trying to meet them. I'm
Mm.
constantly trying to figure out what feels good, what like always putting something on top in order to try to fit in order to find happiness, in order to find joy. And there might be these moments and phases where I think it's working, and then ultimately it doesn't work. It can't work. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really well said, man. My own mask really was created. The gangster profile that I shared with you was born from that deep sense of fear, an interpretation of being a coward because I couldn't protect my mom from the violent abuse of her boyfriend at the time, and that feeling of like worthlessness and helplessness was so strong, and it was there, and then I just tried to move on, but it was there. Once it was planted, it was planted. It was like anchored inside of me, and I find myself trying to run from that over and over, and eventually culminated in a almost my death in 1999 from a drug overdose, which I could trace that back and be like, wow, I literally cast a death sentence upon myself unbewittingly at the age of 10 that
Mm-hmm.
would almost fully manifest 11 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would love for you to maybe elaborate a little bit more on, like the struggle that men have particularly that you've noticed with other men as well as yourself as a man, um, with the masks that we wear, with all the pretending that we do. You're a physically fit, strong guy. You've achieved, good physical fitness. You've been a personal trainer. Technically still are, not maybe operating as much, but you've achieved a lot of those things. You felt that, but that wasn't fulfillment. But a lot of guys try to hide behind that for sure, and other things. So maybe love to hear you share a little bit about, what are you noticing with men around the masks and then the underlying wounds perhaps too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been around men's work for a number of years, maybe 6 years, and I've helped facilitate some circles. I've been to retreats, and whew, there's this deep-seated belief that I have to carry this burden alone, and I cannot show my vulnerability. I cannot say, I don't know what to do right now. I feel broken. I don't have
Mm,
a solution. There is this belief that men carry, that they have to have it together. They have to be together, and you see it in their bodies. Their body is armor. They're hard, and it works for so many things. Like, it is the survival mechanism. And for whatever reason, family of origin, ancestry, our culture, society at large, like all the systems that are running this belief, so many of us carry. And even somebody like me who's dove into a lot of this stuff, really explored and examined it. This shit runs deep, and it's layered and it's multifaceted. It comes up in the spiritual realms, like it's with new flavors. Like, I've got to be this divine masculine, and I've got to hold her and
hmm
contain her in her chaos. And men then take on this like spiritualized belief of like having to have it all together. And
Yeah.
so it feels very multifaceted, and it's heartbreaking. And when I see myself or men have that moment of cracking there's this old way of being, this old indigenous way of being where men would come back from the war or the battle, and they'd have a ceremony for them where they would give them a cup of water, and then everybody in the tribe would have an empty cup, and they would tell them, now take that cup and empty a little bit in everyone's cup. This is your burden, and we're here to share that burden.
Love that.
It's communal, like it's just so embodied. And when I've had these experiences in circles like that, that is a memory that comes through. I was like, holy shit, we're not supposed to do this alone. We've been
Exactly.
drinking the wrong Kool-Aid, like this. Yeah. So that's to me, a fundamental trauma belief that every man I've been in contact with carries.
Yeah, bro. I'm gonna go back and highlight again just to double emphasize the importance of what you're saying, because I really know that men especially need to hear that first part. We tend to think and are trained, or maybe, you know, we see other men being a certain way, that we need to be this provider, protector, successful, always having it together, the strong one. And then what happens is, in every man's journey, there are those moments where we don't know what to do. We feel lost. We're
Mm,
uncertain. Things maybe don't work out. Maybe there's a major crisis. And
mhm,
suddenly we're like incapable of mustering up that courage or that like strength and without really faking it,
mhm.
right? Like something, it's like the body's like, nah, that's not what's so. But we're like, oh man, I got, and you know, and I went through this too. And even up till 2018, I, you know, is when I had a huge crash where that macho man, you know, tough character just came melting down, and I became super raw, super vulnerable. I was so incapacitated physically with anxiety and insecurity around my girlfriend at the time that like there was no faking it. Like it was like it took something so intense like that to really just pull me down and
Mm,
get real with the fact that there was something in me that needed my attention.
mm,
And I would love to hear, you know, maybe some of your thoughts about those core wounds and how important it is to bring awareness to that. I love that you talk about sharing the burden, because that's something I've only been able to move through myself with the support of many others around me, men and really awesome women who've also held space, nurturing, loving, allowing me to be vulnerable, not have to be a strong man. I've been so blessed. And even to this day, I've got men and women around me that are just so rich like that. Like I can be me. Even my girl right now is like, I can cry. I don't have to be strong all the time. I don't have to pretend like if I'm feeling, I can move down and then I come right back up pretty quickly as a result. So it's a real blessing. So what do you see, you know, the wounds that show up in those spaces,
mhm.
or even in your own life, you know, both and for men, those, what are they feeling at the bottom? What do they tend to encounter is really sitting there
Mm,
that they've been avoiding perhaps for a long time?
mm. Loneliness, um, this fundamental trauma that we all carry of this belief that we don't belong.
Yeah.
It's a huge one. Um, I mean, in birth, it's that original separation trauma. Like, you know, duality. You've entered duality. You've entered,
Mm,
and many, I believe, wiser societies than us who are earth-based in the past realized that and had a lot of ceremonies and practices set up to welcome this baby, this child into the world. They had a specific song. The whole thing is just like drenched
mm,
in belonging energy. It's like,
so good.
and there's this belief once they get older that they're going to go have a vision quest and they're going to come in contact with their individual soul purpose gifts for the community. That's just like normal for them, right?
Right.
They, and
And some
so
people are listening right now, like, what is he talking about?
yeah, this was when I found out these things. I'm just like just
Wow.
listen to Western African tradition stories, just like a story of just what's normal for them brought me to my knees in tears. It's like we got it so wrong, like what we're doing. And so we have that original birth trauma, and instead of all of those beautiful ceremonies, you know, you grow up in this hyper individualized, segmented, commercial, corporate, you know,
Or,
society
or even in the
culture.
hospitals, right? They throw the
In the
baby in an
hospital,
incubator
it starts
away
from
from mom.
day zero, right? Like it starts from day one.
It's just so unnatural.
Absolutely. I mean, there's just so much that's out of nature, out of our natural way
Mhm.
of being, that it's tragic and so it's just perpetuated this sense of separatism, this isolation. And I carried it, you know, for a long time, and it comes in circles and cycles. Like it'll still rear its head in different ways. Now, since I've had this deep sense of belonging phases and experiences, I have this ability to kind of look at that and be like, okay, I know that's not true. It feels very real right now. Like, but I, you know, instead of getting totally taken by it, and believing it fully and getting lost in that. And
That's part of the embodiment journey, is learning how to listen in again to the body. You know, I was just actually recording my trauma informed coaching course and talking about the different brain centers that are impacted by trauma, and the interoceptive center, the insula in the brain, is responsible for our ability to be internally aware, to
hmm,
sense our heartbeat or the different feelings and sensations in the
I like
body.
interoception.
Interoception, yeah. So the insula is the portion of the brain responsible for interoception.
Um,
And the practices that, I know you're familiar with some of your own and I've got my own, but we have to actually rehabilitate that part of our brain, because especially in our Western culture with the education system the way it is, there's a high prize on intellectualism and a lot of emphasis on solving problems through the mind.
mhm,
Very little emotional, if any, emotional intelligence development training practice. It's just like, I mean, I remember middle school being very uncomfortable, the social dynamics and all kinds of strange emotional feelings, but no context, no space for exploring that, being with that, nobody above me or below me or beside me to discuss that. It was like, every kid left himself kind of experience, and then just kind of learning from however friends believe and perceive and judge. It's like that just becomes the modeling, and that's not very healthy a lot of the time. And I find that being connected with the body, even though like it seems weird to say that because it's like everyone has their body, but the awareness of what's going on in the body is lost.
mhm,
What did you discover when you started your journey leaving? In the divorce was a big one, I'm sure.
mhm.
How did you explore your body? How did you come to that part where body became important, awareness of body became important? There was a reintegration, or a marrying back of the mind with the heart, the emotions, and the body. Like, I'd love to hear some of your own experience around that.
Yeah. Well, that journey into my body at first was very fitness and wellness based. And I had this like, reverberation or like, rebound effect where it's like I wasn't active and I wasn't eating healthy for a long time. And then I like committed to it and I was like, wow, I feel amazing. Wow, I've cured depression. Like I've cured all my problems. And then the problems came back. And I was like, okay, maybe I need to work out more. Okay, maybe I need to change up this
Mm,
exercise, change up this nutrition. Like that was constantly going back. And even though I found out about things like meditation and, emotions and stuff, that stuff's hard and scary. So I would keep
mm,
going back to my comfort level, which was maybe it's the wrong supplement. Maybe if I get some, functional diagnostic tests, like spending lots of money, time, and energy, like continuously avoiding the emotions, even though I'm learning
mm,
about them and all of that, and ignoring the somatics and the embodiment when I feel uncomfortable, when I feel, which I didn't know
mm.
at the time, chronically dysregulated, like just
Yes.
with numbness, this chronic fatigue, this like brain fog. And I'm like, man, my diet is like, it must not be right. Maybe I'm not supposed to be eating paleo. Just constantly spinning my wheels and avoiding feeling the body. It's like anything
Right.
that I only want to feel good. So that was no times wasted, no regrets. But, if I was to give advice to people, like if you have the capacity to not waste years and years doing that again and go towards somatic sensations, it's uncomfortable and out of what's normal at first, maybe for you, is definitely for me. But once I really committed to that and staying with the discomfort, that's when things actually started to really shift for me.
That's so beautiful. Everything you just shared, bro. Thank you for all this. And I want to just throw in right at that last part that it is uncomfortable at first because it's new, it's unfamiliar. But in the long run, it's like the uncomfortability is like this compared to like a mile long length of potential pain and suffering that comes with not entering into the body, right?
Mm,
For me, bad relationships, chaos in relationship, reflecting the unresolved trauma, the unhealed wounds, the unmet needs within myself kept showing up in chaotic relationships that were just ripping my life apart. And I spent years. And so I'm with you, man. Like if we can shave some years off of, there's other struggles to be dealing with in the world that I
I mean,
think
I
would
feel like
be,
that's our job is like we're the phoenixes. We're we learn by the hottest hot of fire over and over again, all of the different nooks and crannies of the
yeah,
darkness. And then we come back are like, cool, you don't have to do 90% of that. Let me just give you
yeah,
a quicker, straighter path. I promise you, if you
yeah,
stay with this process, it's
yeah.
going to be much faster and easier than what I did.
And it is, and I get to see that with clients that I work with, and I wouldn't be able to do it if I didn't have this journey. And I also say I want to set you up for bigger problems in the world. There, you don't have to deal with the same problems that I've already dealt with, other people are dealing with. Like, you can deal with, there's bigger global needs right now, and I feel like I'm really committed that people get through this other part in an accelerated way, not bypassing it, because there is no bypassing it. There literally is no way out but through the self, through
Mhm.
the personal experience. You have to have that journey
Mm.
one way or another to find fulfillment and peace.
Yeah.
And this other part of it, this thing that you call soul purpose, maybe if you want to transition a little bit into the soul purpose, and soul purpose guide work that you're involved with, I think, the embodiment to soul purpose, there's a lot to say there. So feel free, brother.
Mm. Yeah, it all has been that journey. It's all been me coming back to my body in all of these different ways, trying to find quick fixes for how I felt, avoiding deep pain, allowing myself to go deeper, getting a really good therapist, going deeper in the embodiment work, the somatic work, becoming trained in integrative somatic trauma therapy, going to all of these retreats. All of this stuff was helping me find more understanding of the somatics. And at the same time, I had this part that was like, why don't I feel better yet? Why am I not fixed? Why am I still broken? Why am I still struggling? Why it's like I have this knowledge, I'm doing the work, I'm doing the parts work, I'm doing all the stuff. Like why I get these like phases where I feel really good and then I'm like coming back into some existential depression thing. And I'm having these experiences at some retreats where it's so powerful and I'm seeing this model of something. It's what I call, not what I call, what I've been taught is the golden shadow. I'm like, who are these men
Mm,
who are able to bring back all of this ancient wisdom, healing tools, shamanism, but yet they're so modern and applying it to our modern day issues. And they're just so tapped in and they're so on purpose. Their life is just drenched in they know where they're going, they know what they're doing, and there's this groundedness. I was like,
mhm,
I fucking want that. I need that. I need purpose. I don't understand what my purpose is. I'm doing this personal training and I'm making it holistic. So that's feeling more purposeful um the nutrition and trying to help people out in those ways. But I'm seeing something that's deeper that I'm so jealous of and so uncomfortable by because I don't have it. And now I understand this concept of golden shadow. It's like I'm projecting on what's already there. I'm seeing what's already inside of me, but I don't realize it. And I'm saying that's them. They're so great. I don't have it. It's like actually I did have it. And that's why it was getting stirred up and
mhm,
activated. And so this continues for years. And there's several well-meaning people in my life who are saying things like, well, maybe not everyone has a purpose. Maybe purpose is just to be like you've made it, you've been born, like do that work to just love yourself where you're at. And there's like these little nuggets of truth and wisdom. And then something was telling me, no, they're missing the mark. They just don't know. Like I'm not being met at this. I remember like screaming in men's circles, like, I want to be met. And
wow.
I didn't know what that meant.
Mm,
I kept trying to like analyze what that meant, like psychoanalyze it, and it wasn't working. And
yeah, it doesn't work.
it doesn't work. And so
Mm,
this continues for years until I go through a breakup of what I consider my deepest love, like the almost 4 year relationship that completely annihilated so many parts of myself that I thought I knew who I was, and then showed me all of these parts of myself that I had no idea existed. You know, my inner romantic, my inner poet, you know, like just the muse and the whole completely psychedelic caterpillar turning to goo, coming out a butterfly experience of a relationship. And it was a mutual decision that we both needed to go on our own soul journey. Like there was just, we weren't able to meet each other anymore. And, or in the ways we were meeting just weren't meeting the needs of that growth and expansion. It had reached its threshold. And so after that, my life started destabilizing. All of these roles that I kind of had with community, my business, just as this embodied man, this spiritual man, it was all my shadows were coming to the surface. All of my mask wearing was coming back, which I thought I was long done with. It's like childhood wounds coming in. Very hard to describe this period of 4 or 5 months. Just so incredibly psychedelic, strange, and I was chronically dysregulated. My energy was, and so I ended up going to Costa Rica on this 3 week, you know, little soul journey, exploration. And within day two, I'm like, I don't want to go home. I don't want to deal with my personal training business anymore. I want to keep traveling. I want to sell my things and go like this call to adventure, this spiritual call to nomadism, coupled with destabilizing crisis. Those are two big hallmarks of what Bill Plotkin's would call a soul initiation, and this
Mm.
comes from his book, The Journey of Soul Initiation, and it's this period from mentally, spiritually, emotionally being an adolescent and crossing this threshold into young adulthood. And most people nowadays will never cross that threshold. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm in a vision where we're changing that right now, but
Yeah.
for
The
many
trajectory
decades,
has been not.
exact
There's
trajectory
a
has
lot
been
of ways and
children.
means to a bypass and avoid that altogether.
Mhm.
And there's just a lot of distraction available, a lot of different ways to seek pleasure and entertainment and everything so that that doesn't have to be confronted.
Absolutely. And, you know,
I was
of
going to
course,
say earlier, actually, before you go, there's like a whole market on selling solutions that are actually supporting the bypassing,
yeah,
spiritual, so-called holistic
yeah,
solutions,
absolutely.
healing support and solutions. A lot of healers provide this, like this again, it's a lot of bypassing. It's like, I'm going to do this thing for you, I'm gonna make you feel better. It's like, you don't need to be made to feel better, you need to be made to feel
Mm,
what's really there. And
mm,
the feeling better is the byproduct of being with what
mhm,
you are avoiding. What
mhm,
you think you can't be with traps you and limits you and binds you. And once you see that you can be with it, you have completely eradicated the cause of your fear,
mm,
the self insufficiency,
mm,
right? It's the not being with. And there's a lot of people capitalizing on the not being with intent. I don't want to be with this.
mhm.
And it's not just big pharmaceutical companies selling medications. It's
The whole
even
spectrum.
holistic solutions. I mean, there's things that present as holistic solutions. It just isn't really doing it. It's more of it's a distraction. It's a temporary relief. It's a bypassing really instead of going through.
Yeah, I see it as like they're offering things that aren't putting poison into your body, like, you know, some more intense pharmaceutical solutions or like a chronic putting this, you know, dampening of the symptoms. But in a way, it's like God, like so many YouTube videos are like cure your anxiety with this nervous system regulation technique. I'm like,
Or
well,
this
why is there...
supplement or right.
Yeah, yeah. Like, why is there anxiety?
What's at the root of that is really what, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what
And
matters.
what you said is such an important point. It's even in these well-meaning, more alternative solutions to what's been a real problem. Um, they're calling themselves holistic. They're not actually holistic, and I look at it as like holistic with a W, like really
Right.
like
All
holistic.
inclusive.
Yeah, including soul, including your purpose. And that part of you has a very big impact on how you're going to feel day to day. The phases you go through where you feel like complete crap, anxiety, confusion. Sure, it could be a lot of these other things. It could be, your job and all this stuff. But a lot of times at the root, the soul is trying to create something, or it's trying to communicate with you. Like something is happening at that level. And a soul purpose guide, a good one from my understanding, is not going to provide you a meditation that's going to remove those feelings. They're actually going to provide a container that says, thank you for feeling lost. Thank you for feeling confused. If you want to, you can even go by the name Lost for a while.
Mm.
Like really embodying that this moment, we're allowed to go through these moments, and we're not just allowed, it's highly encouraged with the right support to feel off center, to feel off balance, to feel dysregulated. Like going through these phases will bring you so deep into yourself if you go into it with courage, with awareness, with support. That is what soul purpose guiding is about. Whereas a lot of, I don't know, therapy is about like, let's purge, let's feel a little bit better so we can get back into this way of living. And this way of living um, is pathological. Like that's my
It may
belief.
be completely misaligned with your authentic self-expression and reason for being. And so yeah, trying to get somebody back in touch with normalcy might actually just be pushing them right back into something completely contradictory to what's more
Elongating.
deeply aligned. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
prolonging the possibility of discovery of self expression in authentic revealing of one's being.
yes. I mean, that is what soul purpose is. There is a way that we can all try to create purpose in our life, and it's a meaningful way. It's an important aspect of living. It's like from each moment, like how can I create some purpose to this, some intention, like what's driving this? But if that's all there is and you never come into contact with your soul purpose, um, it won't last. The sole purpose was put there before you were born. That emerges. That's to be revealed to you, through right practice, through nature, through, these big crazy moments in life where you're being asked to take a big call to adventure like I did with selling all my things and going and having no idea and feeling very lost, confused, and full of grief for many months. Um, that's that's quite necessary. That's the setting up the right environment for the sole purpose to grow, emerge, and be shown to you. And that's a very different, and in my opinion, way more relieving way to come into purpose than like I have to think, okay, what am I passionate about? This job could work, this could work, that could work, and purpose is revealed, and it's so much bigger than job, career. It's like the thing that you were meant to do day to day, moment to moment, live your life in this incarnation right now. And
Mm.
once I got connected to that feeling, everything else in my life became secondary. They all became supporters,
Mm.
money, relationship, like those things used to be the forefront. Like, how do I manifest, money? How do I manifest the right sacred partnership and manifest travel in the perfect home that has the river in the backyard and the nature to put my feet in, and like wanting to manifest all these things to be just so, instead of manifesting how do I feel just so, how do I feel perfect on the inside, and then from that place everything else can start to articulate and move and structure, and
Mm.
my life becomes this beautiful dream that I never could have ever imagined with my mind trying to manifest everything, and it's all in support of purpose.
Oh, good. It's so validating to listen to you share, so supportive of, the Invincible Coaching Academy that I run. I tell people sometimes in there that you're like a plant or like an orchid flower, you know, that wants to blossom. It's like my job isn't to force any of that process. It's to create a context or an environment with the right conditions that allow your authentic self-expression to come through.
Mm.
We do look into things like, what are you passionate about? We do look into things like, what problems can you solve? We do look into the practical things, because they're definitely going to be a part of it at some point. But the real deeper part of the journey that I take people on is into that kind of melting down
Mm.
and giving up the idols.
Mm.
There's a lot of people that come into the space that are wanting to be manifesting, or,
Mhm.
and it's, I deal a lot with this effort to control, the effort to, direct my future forcefully. And the reason being because when I look, all the looking I've been doing with people that I work with, including myself, at the effort to control the future, underneath that is always a fear that the future is going to be just like the past. And when that motivator is running the show, we make these efforts to control and direct things. And that innately says, I don't trust the future to be good.
Ooh.
I don't trust that the outcome is going to be okay. And there's
Mm.
a lot of people, that's one of the things that I guess people are selling, this law of attraction and manifestation teachings. And it appeals to the fear of the ego, that sense that something's wrong with me and I got to fix it. And so if I can just get this, and this thing, it's like the mind has all these idols that it believes are going to be its gods,
Mm.
and save it from some kind of certain destruction, whether it's the relationship you mentioned, the money, and, the things that for you are like supportive now, peripheral things. They're not the main thing.
Mhm.
And so it could be hard. I remember Terrence McKenna, listening to him years and years ago, but a lot of things, I listened to hundreds and hundreds of hours of him, but he said one thing that was so powerful. He said that it's the prophet's job to destroy the idols of the tribe.
Mm.
And I feel like that's been a big part of the work that I'm in. It's like, I find myself, I don't do anything on purpose, like as a conscious thing. It's like, I show up in like whatever's needed in the space. If it's I want to manifest this and that. It's not that it's wrong to have desires for certain things, but the motivation matters.
Mm.
The come from matters. And I'm really good at sniffing out the inauthenticity, right? Like there's some that just doesn't sound right there. And I mean, people present well, smiles on their faces and very powerful and conviction. And I'm like, yeah, and there's something else there. Like, what if you just give up the effort to control the outcome and give up having to have this thing this way?
Mm.
And it's uncomfortable because it starts to move people. And that's my job, is to move people. And I own this as my job, as a guide myself, as a purpose guide, as a life guide, as a transformational coach, whatever, is to lead people into the places of uncomfortability that, again, that they have never believed they could be with,
Mm.
that they're still running from in some way. And this is, my company's called Invincible Kingdom.
Mm.
And I have discovered there is this quality of invincible being that is already present at everyone's core. It is the very center of our existence. It's never going to die. It
Mm.
keeps on flowing no matter what we go through. It's always present. And to get in touch with that, we have to move into those spaces within our body, especially the emotional and somatic territory, and explore what we once believed was too big, too painful, too overwhelming, too powerful, and embrace it.
Mm.
And in that embrace of those unmet parts, those shamed, unwanted, denied parts, we finally find a freedom, which leads to what you were saying. It's like that feeling. It's like, I feel good inside.
Mhm.
I don't need to have anything to feel good now. It's like, I get to have those things. They get to support my journey, but what I was really looking for all along was already present. The kingdom of God is within you. And
Amen.
I think that finding, it sets people up to now live out what you're all about. This
Mm.
purpose life that is motivated by an authentic self-expression, a divine DNA. It's like, it was written, it's there. but your job in a sense is to help people detangle, like myself is included. We help them unravel and unpack and uncover the
Mhm.
suppressors.
Yes.
And there's a wide range of suppressors. Is there anything else you want to share about that? And we'll take a few more minutes and then we'll have to wrap up because I think I have another call coming up shortly. But this is so good, man. We might have to do a part two, man. This is
I
rich.
mean, I've written so many like side notes, just like, wow, there's a
Mm,
lot in what you said. And I feel such a kinship with you and what
thank you,
you're
brother.
doing.
Likewise.
Yeah. It's like I see you and phew, just that as a guide or coach, the the trust it takes in having gone through our own process and finding those truths. We're not relying on a belief. It's like I can challenge this person coming in,
Mm,
break down some of that stuff, what they say, and it looks really uncomfortable for them. And it's like holding that line because like I've been there. Like I know you're not gonna crumble and you'd be totally fucked. Like I know that story that says you will, and I'm just holding the line like, yep.
yeah, you mentioned that the beliefs are, truth doesn't need a belief,
Mm,
and a lot of people are trying to. There's even belief change coaching.
mm,
It's like beliefs are. I mean, you can believe anything, right? I mean, you could believe you could. I'm on a 29th floor. If I could believe that I could jump off the
for
balcony
sure.
and that I'm going to fly, I can believe that. But there are laws in nature that prove that beliefs, certain beliefs, or like the black cat is bad luck, these superstitions that form.
Mhm.
A lot of us live in a world of superstition, but they're not superstitions for us. They are real. My life is governed by X, Y, or Z, or this is the truth. And it's like, that's a belief.
Mm,
It isn't necessarily the truth. And people are
totally.
like, well, what is truth? Well, truth is something that you can discover for yourself and should discover for yourself. Actually, truth is what you are, but that's a real mystery for people. Like, I could say that and it
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything, but we
Like,
can give people an experience of that. And that's a very different thing altogether.
absolutely. And I was just talking to a client about this before this call. Beliefs are beautiful placeholders. If something
Yeah.
like stirs in you when you hear, I don't know, Osho or Rumi say something, you're like, and then when you're in your like negative spirals, you're like, fuck that dude. Like, I don't believe that. But then you come back, you're like, no, I think it's real. I'm going to keep trusting and
Right.
believing.
Yes.
And then something happens. You transcend the belief and then it becomes embodied. And then that's
Mm-hmm.
when it's truth. It's like, this is my truth.
Mm-hmm.
I might try to speak it in words, and then the words, are limited so that
Yeah.
words can't be truth. They point to the truth. And so if you're just, trying to analyze my words, but the big piece of embodiment for me was like listening to masters speak, reading the words, and just like feeling and not trying to figure out these things. And that to me, that feeling is truth. Like that feels true. And so I keep hooking onto that, anchoring into that until I have a very embodied experience of it. And I'm like, okay, verified.
So good. And I'm a big student of a lot of religions, but the Bible's one of those texts that I really have come to study. And I wish I could say I could master. I think I'm way ahead of a lot of people in it, but I still feel like I'm at like the 0.001% of demystifying it all. But that's the meaning of faith in my experience. Is faith is an embodiment. There's a verse in Hebrews chapter 11 says faith is the substance of
Mm,
the things that we hope for, and faith is the evidence of things that are not yet manifest.
mm,
It's a feeling, it's an inner conviction, and it's not a force thing. It's a surrendered acceptance
mm,
that this is already so.
mm,
If you're trying to force it, it's because there's another force that's saying, I don't believe this really. I
mm,
don't trust this actually. And
mm.
so I'm constantly helping people identify these nuances where, like, no, I believe I can have a lot of money. Yeah, but there might be some deeper conviction. Why don't we take a look?
We
And I
have
often find there are. We have what?
we have parts. We have conflicting parts.
Exactly.
The whole
Exactly.
topic in
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
With these little sub personalities that I help people unpack. give us space for them to breathe and talk, because a lot of times people are in their day to day in such conflict with these parts, and then they identify with it and like, now, blah, 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 blah. And it's okay. You get to be one part in this container. What does that one part have to say? Like, it's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
There's some wisdom there, and it's old strategies, and there's stuff to work with here, but wow, how beautiful to like give it a moment.
Mm, how beautiful to give it a moment.
Give it a
I
moment.
love that. And really understanding that it being, having the different parts is safe. And that's a big part of my work fundamentally, is to train everyone that like we can be with parts. It's not eternal. It's not going to last forever. It isn't. Most of us are resisting, suppressing, or denying so
Mhm.
many different parts of our experience.
Mhm.
To me, that's the most simple way to describe the fundamental problem of human existence. There's an inner conflict with various parts of my own experience. My self identity is a weird confluence of those conflicted parts. Me compensating for the parts that I don't want to have. And so that's where my masks show up and I pretend and I'm operating all these ways because I don't want anyone to see or feel, including myself at some point. I don't even want to be with that myself. This other part of me that feels deeply inadequate or um, the inferiority, and as men, especially as men, um, there's like the locker room guys and the football players and the jocks and the wrestlers and like, kind of tough guys. Then there's the other men that are like, they're maybe not so athletic, not in those sports. And like, they can be intimidated. They can feel insecure. There's all this developmental psychology stuff that's taking place in these early years where men don't know where they fit in.
Hmm.
And they typically have a goal of maybe education and success, like in the Western world, and making money, providing somehow. But there's a whole world of unresolved emotional, psychological, emotional, and somatic conflicts that have just kind of living somewhere. And then there's these like crises that occur, these midlife crises, or there's like a mental breakdown at some stage, and they're like, what's guys that are just like, I got it all. I got a wife, I got kids, I got the house, and all of a sudden I just feel miserable. I just bought the new car too, and none of it's making a difference for me. What's going on? They turn to other things. Maybe it's pornography. It's going out to the strip clubs or, drugs of some sort. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that men try to cope with this on their own because they cannot talk, right? They've never learned that it's safe and okay. They've never had the experience. Maybe they're consciously avoiding it. In many cases, I think it's an unconscious avoidance. I think it's just I wouldn't even know what, it's not even, it's so unknown that it's not even known. It's just, so they just default to some. In my men's mastery intensive training, I cover the 4 archetypes of the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover.
Mhm.
And I put together some diagrams based on, some things I've seen over the past, but I kind of put them in a prettier way, like a more visually beautiful way to see. But we see these maturing paths of the boy through boyhood psychology and the man into the higher mature man. But if the man is, what I've discovered, the way I say it is, if a man does not have the opportunity, he's not receiving modeling, or he's suppressed in some way, like maturing as the sovereign, he defaults into one of the what um, the bipolar shadow characteristics, which are both a passive and an active, or an active and a passive, right? So in the king example, if a man doesn't mature into his inner sovereignty because he has not been led and guided and empowered to move in that direction, which very few men are, he can default into the active shadow, which is the tyrant,
Yeah.
or the passive shadow, which is the weakling. And we see a lot of men, maybe they're not so violently tyrannical, but we can see a lot of men still pretending a lot with the macho tough guy thing. And then there's a lot of men that are just like, they're weak, and you just can see them and you're just like, what's wrong with you, bro? Like,
This is a body language. I mean, it's
yeah,
clear as day, like slumped shoulders, looking
yeah,
down, like,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And they never had the guide. So, that's why I think the teaching of the 4 archetypes is a good mirror into the soul. And it allows us to really identify where we might have gotten stuck somewhere. And what's really great is that if you're in a passive shadow, the way to move into maturity is you have to move through the active shadow.
Hmm.
And so we have in the warrior side, the active shadow of the warrior is the sadist. He's the
Hmm.
physically violent oppressor to people around him, right? Abuser. And then we have the masochist, which is where a lot of us turn. That's the self abuse.
Hmm.
Maybe it's through drugs and alcohol. Maybe it is through self harm. And a lot of kids turn to that side of the shadow. Why? Because even with women, they have a warrior side too. And there's a lot of women that do self harming. I had a girlfriend who cut herself. She has like a huge vat of scars on her arm. Like it's crazy. Why would someone do that? Why would masochism be a path? Because they were never empowered to operate in their warrior. They were not empowered to say no, protect their inner kingdom. In fact, because a lot of parents, even in their well-meaningness, they suppress a lot of these archetypical developments. They
Hmm.
don't know that. And so children and then they wonder why their kids are sick, and then they end up getting on medication, which just covers it up more. And they're not dealing with the fundamental issue is that there are lines of development, soul purpose development. And I love the four archetypes as a way of examining, well, what are the lines? What are the archetypical patterns, that fundamental ways of being that belong to me as a being?
Hmm.
And in the king, warrior, magician, lover, and there are many archetypes I know, and we've talked about that before in our other call, but anything you want to share about that? And I'm sure
I mean, there's just so much, dude. Like,
it's
what's
like
your
we just got
cutoff
another 10
time?
hours of
So I
conversation going.
know to like elevator pitch it a little bit.
Okay, that's good. I'm gonna take like 5 more minutes. We'll wrap up on that. But yeah, this is a blessing, brother. Appreciate you.
Yeah, it is a blessing. Yeah, I mean, to speak to the archetypes, it's a very powerful model to use. Something I've been working with. I talked to, last time. Again, I'm naming Bill Plotkin. He's been deep in this purpose guiding work for many, many years. He's this like eco psychiatrist and nature guide, wilderness guide, rites of passage guide, soul purpose guides, has a whole school, the Animas Valley Institute. Um, so he's like the man when it comes to a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about. And he's a big foundational pillar for my education. But he has a book called Wild Mind, and it's a nature-based map of the human psyche. And so it works with all four directions. And in each direction, it's not just the archetypes of, the parts, the subpersonality, the shadow. It's also the archetypes of our facets of wholeness, which is something in psychology is not talked about a lot, with which is like you already have this innate wholeness within you that you can call upon. And, I'm sure you teach and coach that in the ways that you teach and coach that. This is just another map of that to work with. And so associated with the direction of the north is our nurturing generative adult. And this is something you can just call upon. You can do exercises and it really fucking works. Like it starts to show up. And in the south, it's the wild indigenous one. And in the east, it's the innocent sage. And in the west, it's the dark muse beloved. And there's more archetypes with each direction, but those are kind of the main ones. Those are the wholeness that's within us. And you can start calling upon it, doing journaling, all this work. And it helps to to heal the subpersonalities or the parts, the shadow stuff. It helps um, engage in relationship. And which kind of segues, I'll just say like one more thing about the parts work. So many people, myself included, have spent a lot of time looking at our parts showing up as this obstacle to our wholeness, our obstacle to
Mm.
greatness, our obstacle to our potential. And the next level of that is accepting that self-love is needed in order to heal these wounds. You need
Right.
to be able to love and accept these parts. So that's one aspect of my healing journey, which I've heard a lot. And what I've come to is actually another level, which is you don't just show up with love as this duty because you're going to get a thing out of it. You can actually switch your perspective and be like, wow, this is a moment for me to practice my nurturing generative adult or like
Mm.
practice what it means to be whole, what it means to give love to something, to someone. And so it's actually a total flipping the scripts on self-work. It's like when this shows up, when I see this pattern, what if I were to be like, wow, what a beautiful opportunity. Like I'm going to school right now. Like I just signed up for this program. I'm so excited to sit in the first class and learn. Like, why am I so excited by that? And then when a part comes up and I'm stuck in a pattern, I'm like, motherfucker, like, when am I going to transcend this shit? Like, when is it over? What, like, and I feel like that is another key piece I try to give to
Hmm.
people. I spent a lot of years looking at it as an obstacle to wholeness when it's the path to wholeness. It's so
Right.
beautiful that it's
That's
showing
right.
up. It's showing me my wholeness. How else am I going to see my wholeness by unless I feel it, see it showing up towards some part of myself that doesn't feel whole. Like,
Absolutely, brother. Oh my God. I'm going to refrain from continuing. We're going to do, I'm just declaring a part two, for sure. Like this is so good. I appreciate you so very much. And, everything is worthy of love is what I share with my people. And, we're going to look and we're going to bring love to what hasn't been loved. All the unlovable parts are worthy of love. And that's a fundamental part of the practice. And, you mentioned something really cool is the positive facets of the types, like with the king, warrior, magician, lover, we get to see what the king,
mm,
what does the mature king look like. It's like, oh, it's like, because we have to see that, otherwise we have no, the king is benevolent, loves to witness the people, and the people love to be witnessed by the king, and so the king represents that witnessing, like that beholding, right, with acceptance, providing the kingdom,
mm,
and sustaining that with benevolence so that everyone has their needs met. This is what the sovereign in us provides. But the kingdom is within, the kingdom is the territory of our mind, emotions, and our body. And I really, when I discovered that, I was like, oh man, it's even biblically richly accurate in there too, if you look for it. But it's, we got to bring these, all the parts of the kingdom that aren't working well have to be handled,
mm.
because if it's left unhandled, it has an effect on the rest of the kingdom somehow. That part of the kingdom within is not going to be operationally pure or sound. And so I love that you're not making any of it wrong. In fact, every bit of it, there's a scripture that says in the Psalms that it's a strange word, but it says, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool. And I find myself constantly guiding people to sit, to be still, to be with that invincible quality of God within that is their nature. And then find from that place of self-realization, self-sufficiency, that the enemies can be brought into that space. The enemies being the unwanted parts, right? Or even the very antagonizing. It could be an unwanted part or it can be an antagonizing part, like a vicious part. But either way, only love can kill a demon. And we
Mhm.
bring those parts into the love, we bring them into the compassion, rather than going into looking for the trauma, looking for the shadow, which is a lot of that work. The other thing I wanted to emphasize is a lot of people are learning how to do shadow work on their own. And it's like, I mean, there's some progress that maybe someone can make with education and knowledge, but to me, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this before we wrap up, I have found group work, relationships to be hugely important for catalyzing and accelerating my transformation, because I would not have any direction. I spent years in isolation, meditating, reading, studying, self processing, self evaluating. And looking back on that, I was like, dang, man, if only I had some people to get with sooner, this would have been a lot faster for me. What do you think?
Yeah, I 100% agree. Real short, like the concept of the shadow, as I understand it, was brought to the West and coined by Carl Jung and his understanding and definition of it, which gets, you know, miscombobulated, misinterpreted, all these
Like
things.
everything.
Your shadow is literally just the part of you that you can't see. Everyone else
That's
will be
it.
like, you do this thing, and you will deny it up and down because you cannot see it. It seems so out of the realm of possibility. That's what a
Right.
true shadow is, not like, ooh, my shadow's showing up here. I was like, oh, really? You see your shadow? Like, that's that's actually
That's right.
not at that
Yeah,
point.
the
You've made
modern
it.
term is a blind spot or a
Yeah.
scotoma in technical term.
Okay.
Um,
I haven't heard that one, but
mhm.
yeah, so that I'm 100% agree. It's in relationship you will catalyze and bring light to the dark much, much quicker, much more efficient, effectively. And that needs to be done
Very
with
well said.
care as well. I've been in a lot of problematic community circles and things where everybody thinks they're an enlightened facilitator and like and then they're like where's the actual structure here, what's happening? So it's important to listen to that part of yourself too that knows like this is too
Mm,
much too fast. I like my system does not want any part of this
mm.
doesn't feel safe. But you got to find those relationships and those containers that you feel safe enough to be a little confused and uncomfortable. It's
Yeah,
not going to be like, oh, this all makes sense. This is my healing. X plus Y equals Z. Like it will still be confusing and you're going to question it, but there needs to be just enough trust to like get you past, that.
absolutely. And I always encourage everyone to have a conversation. Don't just leave the groups you're part of. Don't just judge them because you feel weird or uncomfortable. Like, go directly to the person that may be offended or affected you in some strange way. Confront, have a conversation, deal with it. Um,
Absolutely.
See what's there. Bring some people together to have that conversation if you need support. A lot of times people will leave groups because they get confused, they get hurt in some way, and instead of addressing it, they just kind of run off and live in a story about something. Meanwhile, they were being triggered because there was something inside of them that was being stirred up, and they needed, what they really needed was to open up about that and be met with other presence where that was showing up. And that can be confusing sometimes for people. Like, they don't, the amygdala's firing and it's like, warning, warning, problem, problem. And the problem happened because I'm here and I'm with this person.
Right.
It happens in relationship all the time. And suddenly your partner is, or your wife or spouse or husband or whatever, is like the enemy. And
Mhm.
meanwhile, it's like you brought in wounds that your partner is stepping into. So it's like, and unless we have a system for how to handle that, we're in trouble. And I think
Mhm.
it's important to lay some foundations about how to communicate, um, share authentically and vulnerably. Like, there's a difference between interpretations and feelings, and we got to have that practice. And I think that's why this work is so. When I look at the world, it's like it's so not even close to having this, what I would just consider like healthy humanity in operation. I would say healthy humanity, normal, true humanity is what we're about. It's not that we're like creating special people. It's like actually we're just restoring or providing a space where people can be restored to what they really would be if they were fully integrated. Like,
Mhm.
it's a natural state when
Mhm.
I'm whole and complete and I'm compassionate and empathic with people and empathic towards myself. Like, that's natural. Everything else that's going on out there is very unnatural. And
Mhm.
that's what there is to kind of distinguish. And without containers where we can distinguish that and practice that, we're just left to the same old, same old. So I would love to do a part two, brother, with
I was
you.
gonna
And
say there's plenty I could say to that, but we'll.
I know, I
Oh,
know we can just, and I would love to do this. You down for part two?
absolutely.
Well, and there's other things I want to talk to you about too, even after we wrap this up. But this has been really rich, Joshua. I really appreciate you, your heart, your journey, your articulation, your wisdom and insight. Um, you bring a lot to the table for humanity and for men. Even me, bro, just being here with you, I'm like so blessed to just have a guy like you who I can
Mm.
jive with like this. Like, it
Mm.
nurtures my heart so much and like it strengthens me. There's something about men being with men that are integrated to a degree where self-expression is healthy and wholesome, and yeah,
Like
it's
it.
nourishing, bro. So thank you for this.
Ah, thank you. Yeah. So well said and yeah, feeling super mutual. Thank you.
Yeah, tell people how they can connect with you and where you're at, and
Yeah.
yeah.
My offerings are in flux, but there's a really beautiful offering coming in January that I'm doing with my mentor. It's a big cohort, and then you'll be getting individual guiding sessions, purpose guiding sessions, and group work. It's going to be just I'm super stoked for that. So the sales page for that is nearly published, and I'll be marketing that more. In the meantime, I'm definitely offering somatic life coaching. I have some structured modalities that go through a lot of stuff in the realms of embodiment, meditation, mindfulness, finding your voice, finding your sound, nonviolent communication, embodied nonviolent communication, even some tantra practices, semen retention, if men are into that, cultivating sexual energy. It's like
Got to
all
find a better way to sell that.
yeah, right. Throw a little sex in there.
Yeah.
It's a bonus module.
Yeah.
But
Okay, cool.
I enjoy working with both men and women. More men just tend to have been finding me, but that's starting to shift, it seems like. So I'm
Mm.
fluid with what's showing up. So if somebody wants to come in, we'd have a discovery call and see what are the needs. I'm meeting you where you're at. You know, do you want 12 sessions? Do you want 24? Do you want just one session? You want to just try it out, and so we can do a more structured way, or I can kind of bring in a lot of tools and meet you more where you're at. So that's definitely available. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. My business name is Soul Body Wholeness. Soul Body is one word, SOULBODY, and then wholeness is its own word. But on Instagram, it's all one thing. That's the Instagram handle. And you can find my business page that I just developed on Facebook that I need to put some time and love into. And then there's just my personal Facebook page, which is open, and I market things on there as well. So Joshua Zamrin, and give me a
Perfect.
follow. If you're into this stuff, reach out to me. I love dialoguing about all this stuff. Since I got into this stuff, I've got so many random people messaging me on Facebook, like you did, and it's turning into these like incredible synchronistic
Mm.
connections. So that's how I know I'm living my purpose, just the beautiful synchronicity. So if you feel
So good.
called, reach out to me just to say something or have a question. Like I have conversations with people left and right. It doesn't necessarily lead to like me making money from them or something, but I'm so lit up by this frequency of service and just leading with that and like being of service. And then I'm in this big trust experiment, which seems to be going really well. Like it all just
Mm.
on the place of I'm living in purpose, in service with my mission. And yeah, that's about
So
it.
rich, all of that, man. Thank you, brother. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for being here. Thanks for even opening up the conversation with a beautiful demonstration of vulnerability,
Mm.
authenticity in the masculine. You know, it's just so cool. Really look forward to connecting more and maybe working together a little bit. And going to wrap up the live stream and video, and really appreciate you, brother. Hang out with me for a minute. I want to chat with you briefly. And thanks everyone for popping in. We had some people popping in, drop some comments, but I didn't want to take away from the conversation. And it was just so rich right now.